Alright guys, so I may have mentioned this before in another video, but this section of the basement is actually going to become my engine building space. I do have access through the stairs. There's some cleaning up to do down here. Obviously my sister-in-law just recently moved out, and I got some space again, which this table I used to use for building transmissions. I'm bringing back a toolbox from the shop to put on here for all of just my engine building stuff, and then I'm going to buy a nice, a really nice, workbench, like from Harbor Freight with the lights on it, and just kind of go from there. And then I just got to build a little track system and a dolly and something to bring the engines down here with safely, which is not going to be that hard. It's not very steep to get into the basement. But what I'm going to be talking about today is carburetors. We got some new tools, so I'm going to cut this out real fast, and then I will talk to you guys in a few. Alright guys, so like I said earlier, I was going to come out here today and kind of mess with the car. And so as you guys know, in the last video I mentioned that we wanted to go racing, but we couldn't. So I ended up buying a spark plug cleaner because between the tuning, I'm killing spark plugs. So this is what the last set of spark plugs that I pulled out look like after very, very, very little runtime. I'm fouling them out pretty damn bad. But the tune is getting better. So right now, with the vacuum gauge on it, idling at about 1,000, which is where the engine really wants to idle, I'm pulling 10 inches of vacuum, and it's pretty steady, which is quite impressive. Earlier, it was like 5 and it was bouncing everywhere, so we're getting better. We're getting there. It's still idling fat, and I think the biggest problem is the transition circuits. So I think I need a little less jet, and I need to change the idle restrictions and the air bleeds in this setup. I need to change. So I'm kind of comparatively using my old carburetor as kind of a reference, because that one did idle clean, at least a lot cleaner, but I'm kind of sizing things up. So for instance, the air bleeds for the idle side on this carburetor are 50 thousandths. On the carburetor that was on my old engine, it's way bigger. My 60 thou pin gauge is dancing in there. I don't have anything big enough right now to check it with, but I do have some drill bits that I can use for size. And then the restrictor. So this is one of the modifications that was done by the gentleman who did my carburetor. You usually have a restriction down here for the idle, and it's moved up here, and this is at 30 thou. I believe that feels about right. That's 30 thou. Okay, so that's a 30 thou restriction there. And the whole theory behind this modification for moving this restriction from down here to up here is to move it closer to where the air bleed is located. So when you put this up here, it'll, you know, that restriction where the pin gauge is, you know, it's closer to the air bleed. You're going to have a lot stronger of a vacuum signal. It's going to have a better emulsifying effect from what I understand. So an emulsion is a mixture of two things that do not combine. So in this situation, in a carburetor, you're mixing fuel and air. So when you're moving it up here, the signal is going to be better. That emulsification, I guess you can call it, or emulsion, is going to be a lot finer, a lot better because of the signal strength. So again, I'm kind of using this carburetor comparatively to kind of size things up, figure out where we want to be. Obviously, the air bleeds on the idle side are very big on this carburetor, and on that carburetor, they are not. So I'm going to buy some air bleeds. I'm going to buy some brass inserts like this, because also, you see, on that carburetor that's in the car, the restrictor is massive compared to these. This is a 30 thou, at least it feels like a 30 thou. I'm second guessing myself here. Maybe I was just clearing it out. Maybe there's a little gunk there, but we'll go to like a 31. You know, well, 31 still goes in there. He might have had something, because we switched these at Indy, actually, to be honest with you. And he put them in there. The guy who did my carburetor was at Indy, and we swapped it. So either way, I have to get brass inserts and drill them out. And then once they're drilled out, I can start fiddling with them and going from there. So I do have a set of brass inserts that I can open up in one of my toolboxes. But ultimately, I have to take this carburetor off, drain it, and start to do some things. Now, the biggest problem with this carburetor is that somebody drilled like some massive, like almost 1/4-inch holes in the throttle plates. I'm going to go back to stock ones drilled at 40 thou, which is usually like what mine is here. So I'm going to try to kind of copy this carburetor. I have the same size nozzles. The only difference is that on the rear there is extensions for the nozzles, and it's got a 50cc accelerator pump on the secondary side, which to me seems kind of odd, but I guess maybe not so. I mean, anybody out there have any thoughts on that? Why they would put a 50cc accelerator pump just on the secondary side? I guess if you're cracking it for racing real fast, it shouldn't really matter if you don't have any primary side stumbles, I guess. So what I do know is that I think between the size of the restrictor in the metering block and how small the air bleed is, that is why this thing is running really, really, really rich. So I have to kind of go back to basics, and I'm going to try, actually, what I want to do is kind of set this carburetor up to stock specs. Even though that one modification has been done, I can go back to like a stock size restriction and put stock size air bleeds and put stock size jetting in it and kind of go back to that, which is actually kind of what I want to do, and then go from there. This carburetor, before any modifications were done, according to the builder, I was running a ton of jet. It was like 86 and an 89, but the car idled clean. It never fouled out plugs. I ran the same plugs for like 3 or 4 years. So I know that my problems are probably in the idle circuits, which we fattened up the idle circuits to have a much stronger, more consistent launch. That is why that modification was done. So in the next few weeks, I'm going to get my stuff together and try to mess with this carburetor a little bit better. I do have to fix my AFR gauge, which is ridiculous. It still does not work. And then we're going to go from there. Not having the AFR gauge has made it also really hard to tune. But the only problems that the car is having is, 1, the idle is fat, and 2, low speed cruising, it breaks up. So it's like too much fuel, it's loading up, and it's spitting and popping like, you know, like you're almost putting out the flame. So either way, figured I would talk to you guys about this. I am learning it here by the seat of my pants. Like I said, between these two, I'm not changing this one, but in order to understand this one, I have to know this one. And this one worked pretty good. I managed to drive the car. But even with my old engine, after the modifications, the plugs were kind of a little toasty. So I think I have to go back and probably change the jetting. Is probably going to be the biggest thing on this one, because for the size of the air bleeds, for the size of the restriction here, I think it's going to be in the jet, in the main well jet. So either way, aside from that, I've already bored you guys enough, but obviously this is new, the pin gauge set. We also bought a set of micrometers off of Amazon called Anytime. They're actually good. They checked out with the constants. So those are new. And then I got a dial bore gauge, which this one's called eye gauging. This one had really good reviews. So again, I bought these based off of the reviews on Amazon, and just little things I need like that. And I think the next thing on my list is to get a new degree kit or finesse mine up. So again, my buddy has been doing the cylinder head work on the old engine. We're going to take him the intake, and he's going to port it out even more. He raised the roof on the heads, and I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of little pictures and inserts from that at the end of this video. So if you have watched this far, thank you. Share, like, subscribe, and just watch the clips.